Hi, everyone. I'm Shaheen from The Content Mix, and I'm excited to be here with Laura Uslar, a social media and content marketer in Paris who's now working for a makeup brand within the LVMH Group. Thanks so much for joining us, Laura.
Thank you for having me.
So could you just start out by telling us a bit more about yourself and your background?
Yeah, of course. So I'm actually Venezuelan. So I've been living in Paris already for 10 years, maybe a little bit more. So I did a career in communications when I was back home in Venezuela. And then I decided I wanted to do something more creative with my life. So I came to Paris to study film directing and screenwriting. So nothing to do, I mean, not nothing to do, but something to do with what I do now, but way more artistic. And then I did that for 3 years. And then when I finished, I wanted to maybe stay in the city because back home, like, there were like things were complicated, like let's say politically, economically. So I decided to start working here. I started working in a casting agency, then doing like small jobs in like film, and in films, like maybe like video clips and stuff like that. And then at some point I really didn't like the rhythm that would give me, because you couldn't plan anything ahead. And then money wise wasn't good either. So I decided I wanted to do something, stay doing something creative, but maybe more linked to the communication world. So that's how I started. And then I started my first internship as a community manager. So this was back to, I don't know, I think it was like 2013. So it was like when Facebook was, barely starting, like all the, kind of like the media and the business of ads. Instagram was starting, and I was like, well, I don't really need like a career for this, so I'll start doing this. And then when I entered there, I really enjoyed it. So this first agency, it was basically focused on luxury brands. So I was actually hired because they had international clients and they needed someone that spoke English and Spanish. So I thought it was perfect, but then actually my first clients were French clients, that I had to like step up my French game in this whole thing, especially being a community manager where I needed to write a lot and write for big audiences. So this is something that taught me a lot. So, but yeah, there I had like clients like Guerlain, the beauty and fragrance brand, or I did Biotherm as well. And then I had like very different brands such as Volvo, which is cars. So it's very enriching in sense of, work-wise and community manager. And then I stayed there, I think, for like 4 years. And then I kind of like wanted to evolve into the client, be able to work for one brand and dedicate my full time to it. So that's when I started working in Paco Rabanne. I started as a social media manager and influencer manager. So it was super interesting because kind of like the brand challenge was to change their full image. I think when I arrived there, like the fragrances had like a very different image from what the fashion brand was doing. And the idea was to do like a full brand in terms of like social influence, content, everything. So it was like, I stayed there for 3 years working like with a very cool and creative team that, kind of like were from whom I learned a lot. Um, and then once I kind of like realized my mission there was already accomplished. And this was like back in last confinement. I had the opportunity to join this makeup brand within the LVMH Group as a more as of a on a global or more general role, communication role. I wanted to step out from being specifically social media and being over specialized to have something more strategic where I could really like touch different like different touch points, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I'm now. So I'm communications and content manager for this brand.
Mm-hmm. So when you went to Paris, did you have the idea that you like wanted to work with like fashion and luxury brands, or was that just ended up working out because because that's such an industry there, I guess?
I mean, I don't know. I think I always liked, like fashion. I always loved fashion in general. So when I came to Paris, my idea was actually to work in film. But when I was working in film, I was doing a lot of like costumes and set design. So it was always like something that I really liked in general. I was doing a lot of makeup as well. So I guess I've stayed kind of like in the same, you know, kind of like product range. It's just like a different job that I do right now. But then when I started in this agency and I saw the brands they were working for and the brands that I had as clients, I thought it was fascinating, not only from, you know, the point of view of the products that they sell, but also kind of like the heritage that they had and everything. So, I mean, I guess it just made sense for me.
Yeah, it was like a natural evolution,
Yeah.
right? So very cool. Well, I mean, can you tell us, so you just joined the LVMH group this year or within the last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. And well, first of all, what was it like changing jobs in the middle of a pandemic? And you've been onboarding remotely and everything, I imagine, huh?
Yeah, it was very weird, I must say. I think the beginnings, the first 2 weeks, I was able to go to work, but I started, yeah, like right after summer. So, but the thing is that I knew like my close team, you know, the people that work for me, and like of course my boss I knew from before, so this was perfect. But then my role is very kind of like transversal. So I need to not only see my teams, but also the marketing teams, the image teams, and to see everybody working with masks. Then I would, you know, in the end, I saw them once and then I had to see them twice and I didn't really recognize people because you don't really see their faces. So it was very weird. And then, of course, the fact of working after remotely when we were confined and everything, it's, you need to come up with like new strategies to be able to engage with your team and keep them active and motivated. So yeah, it's definitely a challenge, say the least.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So, could you tell us more about like what's your typical day like now and like your responsibilities? So you're leading a team, it sounds like.
Yeah, I have let's say a team of like two people.
Hmm.
Um, and then I also work, you know, with a different, let's say I work with the social team, with the PR team, with the image team, you know, so it's kind of like a lot of teamwork, which I love, and we'll probably speak about it later. But yeah, so a typical day in my job, I would say, well, since it's very transversal, as I was saying, so I'm involved in a lot of meetings because I have to have the vision of whatever, like everything that's happening in the brand. As a communication manager, I have, you know, my first role, let's say, it's to set the strategy of the brand, the tone of voice, the new vision, where we want to go. It's really a brand that's in complete, like it's in current evolution. So we're reworking everything from the basis, the values of the brand, and everything. So this is kind of like a core work that we're doing. um, then when it comes to launches, I need to think about, you know, like the big idea and the concept that we want to communicate with each launch, and then from there kind of like drive whatever is going to be done by the image the team in the campaign, or whatever activations we will need to do in social, or, you know, kind of like what's going to be done in influence, etc. So it kind of like goes like this, to I mean, I need to, yeah, translate everything for all of the touch points. And then there's also another part, which is a lot of coordination with the markets, because it's true that we have a brand strategy, but at the same time, we need to exchange with all of our markets, where we have, you know, Asia, Europe, you know, in the US as well. So each market has different, of course, realities. So we need to kind of like constantly onboard them and exchange with them to make sure that our strategy is adapted to them. So that's basically what I do and what I could do in a day, you know, from a meeting with a market to, I don't know, meeting with marketing and, you know, describe the whole ideas.
Hmm. So you're like coordinating things across all the different markets at the marketing
Yeah,
communication
I
activities.
yeah, I think my job, it has like a very creative part, and then there's another part which is very much communication and coordination to make sure that everybody's kind of like on the same page.
Hmm. Okay. Um, well, could you tell us more about like your audience and what your channels are for reaching your audience?
Sure. So our audience right now, we have I mean, our core audience is really like makeup artists. And this is, it's an audience that we cannot forget. Where we're trying to take this brand now is to kind of like go and reach new, like broader audience. Like when I say broader audience, of course, it's people interested in makeup, because that's what we sell, but also people that maybe use just a little makeup and just want to feel beautiful, but they're not professionals, or also like more, let's say, people that are interested in fashion, that are kind of like linked to makeup in a certain way, or like new creatives as well. Because the new vision, or where we want to take this brand, is really towards like artistry. And I think it's something that's super important. And this is why we need to onboard a different kind of audiences, of course. So in terms of channel, I guess Instagram for now, it's like our main bet. But we're also using a lot of YouTube, which is super important for makeup brands. It's very relevant. And then, I guess as the trends comes, there's also TikTok that we're developing now to kind of like reach a younger audience. I know there's brands like Elf and Fenty that have done it very, very well. So that's where we are at now, to reach those people.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. What do you think works well on TikTok? That's a hot topic lately. Like a lot of brands are trying to like figure out how to use this format. Huh?
I think TikTok, it's very, I wouldn't, I mean, yeah, of course, it's very particular, but what's interesting is that it's very different from what Instagram and Facebook were once, where you would work in very like crafted content with your creatives, and then you would post, so that to get the likes. I think TikTok, well, first of all, the algorithm is completely different. And then what I think it's super interesting, it's so spontaneous and it's so authentic, and that's like, at least for us, that's what really works. So I guess brands, like, there are many different strategies, but I think it's super important to, as a brand, don't get caught up in the sense of like the content needs to be perfect, we need to, or reposting something that you posted on Instagram. I think you need to just like get away from that, kind of like have a new mindset, and be able and be open also to working with younger creatives that will give you like input in what are the codes that you need to have to succeed there. And just like kind of like, yeah, be more, yeah, be, let's say, get away from like the perfect brand image and just like be more authentic and natural. I think that's definitely
Okay.
what would
Cool. And like, what's been your approach so far? Like, what do you feature in your TikTok videos?
I mean, we feature from, kind of like, of course, like makeup looks and very close-ups, maybe some little videos of like get ready with me, but very, step by step, but in kind of like in a fun way. It's true that makeup is an art, but then you can also make it very fun. So we're working with a different kind of with different talents within TikTok that are doing like constant content for us. Then also us as well. Like we do some content like in our in-house. Let's say we play with the textures of the products and we mix it with some, kind of like upbeat music, and it's just like I don't know. It's fun to watch and kind of like makes you want to like test the products. I mean, at least that's what we think for now, but I think it's working very well.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah. Any other examples of like campaigns you've been a part of? Either in your current role, you've only been for a few months, right? But
Yeah.
also in the past, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, you mean like general campaigns
Or
that
well,
have worked?
yeah, campaigns or content in particular that's worked well, or style of content can also be.
Yeah. I mean, I can either have an example of, like the brand that I'm working now. As I said, it's a brand that it's in current evolution. So we really want to reach these new audiences. And just like by looking on Instagram, we discovered like this very up and coming makeup artist that we really liked, who has like a real vision, like a future vision of makeup. It's not only a good makeup artist, but it has like a real vision of beauty and what are the trends that are going to come up, etc. She's in the US, and then we saw that she was doing the kind of like the artistic makeup for a very niche fashion brand for their couture show. So we're kind of like on a test and learn mode. So we decided just to, kind of like contact them on Instagram. We did like this partnership. So this makeup artist, she used our products in the show to make all these the artistic makeup that they used. And then we kind of like reposted. We did specific content and we posted that on our social platforms. And it's crazy how, we at the beginning we thought, well, maybe it's not going to interest all of our audiences because it's fashion with makeup, so it kind of like distracts your attention. But in the end, we realized we had, I don't know, I think it was like 3 or 4 times more organic reach than normal, which is crazy. And then we kind of like, we were also reposted by important media, like within the beauty world, with like Dazed Beauty or Vogue Beauty. So I think it's not something huge right now, but I think it kind of like gave us or kind of like reassured us that we are in the good direction, of where we want to take the brand and if it's interesting for our audience.
Yeah. So speaking of influencer marketing and your experience with that, like, what do you see that like works really well and doesn't work? I'm kind of curious, like, if you've seen brands that get it right or wrong as well, like on both sides.
Yeah, of course.
Like what makes
I
a
think,
good influencer partnership, I guess, is the question.
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true that in my current role, I kind of like set the influencer strategy globally, but then I don't do like the operational things. Influencer strategy was my actual job in my previous role. And it's true that I think first of all, like influencers, people, when I used to talk about that, people were like, oh, but working with influencers, they must be like such stars or such divas, like that must be so difficult to work with them. I think they couldn't be like more wrong in my sense, because I think the first thing that you need to do when you're a brand is identify profiles that, of course, go well with your brand, but that you're not going to impose to them, like, I don't know, if you're working on a co-creation strategy, for example, for content, impose to them like whatever you want them to do. Is really a matter of collaborating together and giving the liberty of, creating for you as a brand. So that's the first thing that I learned that was super, I think it was super, yeah, like we were successful in that sense. And I think what some brands are still doing now is, kind of like imposing things to do to influencers. And in the end, they seem unnatural and they're not engaging, they don't sell anything. So I think that is like one of the things. And then, yeah, I would say it's more, I think this is the key to working with influencers. It's kind of like giving them the liberty to really create and do stuff for you, because it's going to be them in the end they're gonna help, you build also your brand. And it's, kind of like not the opposite, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, I mean, do you have any like examples of, well, any other examples? Because you mentioned one already, but of a good collaboration that worked well.
Yeah, I mean, from my previous job, I have like a few, for example, but I remember there was this one experience where, I used to work in the kind of like the fragrance part of Paco Rabanne, and then there were like the fashion brand, and we were having this huge like film shoot for a campaign in Namibia, for like a fragrance. And we really wanted to collaborate with the fashion team to do something together and get out some content that was, kind of like very qualitative, but also be able to work with some influencers that would be relevant for both, the fashion side and the fragrance side. And it was difficult because, the audiences weren't the same, the price range of the product wasn't the same. So, it was it took some time. Um, but in the end, what we did is we we really took, it took a little bit time, but we had like this amazing casting, not only of, there weren't like huge influencers, let's say. They were middle, there were some big ones, but it was mostly people that were talents. It was not only people that had followers, and this is something super important to take in account when you're casting influencers. And I know I'm going elsewhere, but it's true that my bosses, they would tell me like, yeah, this person has only, I don't know, 500,000 million 500,000 followers. You need someone with 2 million. And in the end, it's kind of like also thinking, yeah, but maybe the 2 million is not that engaging. The 2 million person, he's going to have like 1,000 brands that he's working for. So maybe you prefer to have like a smaller one, but that will really engage with your brand. So it was kind of like a mix of things. And we all went to this huge like film shoot. We did let's say a lot of like a very qualitative trip with them. We engaged them with the brand. We got them to know, the fashion teams. We did editorial shoots, including the fragrances. So it's kind of like the same, like the first collaboration that we did with the fashion brand. And it was kind of like the concretization of this one brand that we wanted to do since the beginning. And it's funny because, like, as I was saying, these were a group of creatives. So we had, photographers, we had an actress, everybody was doing something, or they were influenced because of what they were doing. So as I said, photographer, actress, we had a girl, like a multidisciplinary like artist. She was like, well, she still is, like an artist. She's an ice skater, people that really do stuff. And in the end, it's funny because this was the first collaboration that we did with the brand, and this group of people were the people that kind of like came with us throughout the rest of the years. They became like the pool of the influencers of the brand. And in the end, it's funny because even when we did events, my last event before the COVID crisis was in New York. I really wanted to work with one of them, because we needed content and invite her to the party. And in the end, it was her who ended up doing like the full campaign film. And it's people that you really engage with the brand, and they become like your spokespeople. So
definitely. Yeah, I think like a lot of times when people think about influencer marketing, it's like getting the influencers to mention your brand or having your brand featured on their channels. But it sounds like you're also getting those influencers, you're featuring them on your channels, right? And getting them to like participate in your content.
Yeah. Exactly. I think it's super important. I mean, I guess I'm talking more of like a global influencer strategy. Then of course you have, more classic ways of reaching them, like with the seeding, or, of course you need to pay them for your mentions, etc. But I think it's super important to have a long-term relationship with them so that they really become ambassadors to the brand. And it's, every time people saw the people that worked for us, they were like, oh my God, like, I really believe that you like the brand. And I think it's key, because otherwise, I mean, if they're not convinced about your brand, I mean, they're not going to convince their audience about it.
Yeah, it's like you were saying, better to have a partnership with an influencer with fewer followers who's like really devoted to the brand than a less authentic relationship with someone with a lot more followers, right?
Yeah, and then exactly.
Cool. So, well, going back to we're talking about channels. So it sounds like your focus, I mean, your kind of expertise has always been in social media, and it sounds like your focus now is also social media. Do you work with any other, I mean, do you publish content on any other platforms, or it's like you're completely focused on social?
I mean, for a brand, yeah, it's mostly social media. Yeah. I mean, then we have, of course, like our online platforms. When I say like our website, etc., but it's generally social media. And in terms of media, like as well, like media buying, we focus very much on the digital space, so display and social. We don't do like offline that much.
Okay.
So yeah, like that's where we're focusing our efforts. And in terms of content as well, what we're trying to do is really, we have like a global strategy, and then trying to publish man, this is base. This is kind of like basic social media, but really publish and adapt our content to each one of our platforms. And it's also important. We're not just creating a strategy and then applying it. We're kind of like, in terms of content, we're testing and learning a lot. So we're not afraid of doing something. I mean, in the end, in the social media world, you publish something and 3 hours later, no one will remember. So this is something that we're doing a lot, and it's giving us like many, yeah, like feedback and guidelines or where we should be going.
Yeah, no, it's probably obvious to you because you're in this world, but I think for a lot of people, like it's only recently that there's really been a shift to like focusing on creating native content for the platforms. It used to be like
Yeah,
you focus on your blog and you share on the social, but that's really starting to change. And well,
yeah,
it's changed, but a lot of people still haven't caught up, I think. Yeah. So, but yeah, it sounds like you're really completely focused on creating native content for like really tailored to each platform. Yeah.
yeah. It's super important. That way you can be, it's the best way to be really engaging.
Hmm.
Um, and this is what we want, of course. I mean, this is what everyone wants.
Absolutely. So your role is global. So how do you make your content resonate in like different geographies that you're targeting around the world?
um, I think, as I was saying, like we create like the global strategy and something, based on like the vision and where we want to take the brand. Um, but then what's super important, and this is something that I recommend to everyone, is just like I really have constant like communication with our markets, in terms of like we present the strategy, and the idea is not to impose something to them. It's more to exchange, and see in what way like it's relevant for them, and then how can they adapt it locally. So I guess it's not something, like the brand strategy, it's not something that it's fixed. You need, of course, to know what's the north of it, but then I think to be able to communicate the same thing in different markets, you need to be open and flexible to adapt it to different needs.
Hmm.
um
Absolutely.
yeah.
So, but your channels they're like global channels, I suppose.
We have global channels right now. For certain markets, they still have, um like, yeah, let's say like local
Hmm.
channels, but it's like an exception. It's the exception to the rule, because we really wanted to have like just like global channels for everything. But then, for example, for Instagram, we have like one specific Instagram account for one market, and we left it like that because it was working very, very well. Same on YouTube, but in general, the recommendation is to have like global channels. And then, of course, we have the specific channels to each region, to Korea or to China or even in Russia. So
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. So, well, I guess I could go on about that, but lots of questions. But I guess we don't have to go too deep on that topic. But
that's a big topic, and it's funny because it's something that I faced in every single
Mm.
brand that I've worked for. It's always the question of, do we stay with global channels or do we go localized? And it's always a big discussion.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think there's like any right answer. Like that's something that
No.
comes up a lot in our Facebook group as well. Like, what's the right number of channels? Like,
Yeah, I
for
mean,
or my boss wants to do 20 channels. Is this crazy?
I
Like,
think it
so,
depends. It depends also on the brand or the
yeah.
sector that you're working on.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Definitely. It's a strategic question, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, well, I also just wanted to ask you, like, what skills do you think are most important for marketers these days?
I think, in terms of skills, I guess it has to a little bit to do with the question that you just asked me, but it's to remain flexible, and the sense of, you know, it's true that you might have like your brand strategy or whatever you're working on, but I think it's important to remain open to new ideas, because a good brand strategy is something that comes out from real teamwork, and be able to accept suggestions, uh, and as I said, like, yeah, new I don't know, no new ways of seeing the whatever you're working on, but always to stay with whatever you want to go, as your north. Never lose that, but be able to enrich whatever you're working on with new ideas. I think the best work that we've like that I've done throughout my career, it has always come out like from brainstorming, from being flexible and kind of like sure of yourself. It's just like letting people do suggestions and bring new ideas and new things. It's yeah, I think it's the best way. And I've also worked with people who like have one idea in mind and they don't want to change it. And I think it's always difficult because then I think many things can be richer when you have more ideas and more heads thinking around it, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a very good point.
Mhm.
So I wanted to ask you about a few of your recommendations, and like resources that would be relevant for other marketers. Um, do you have like a favorite software tool or app right now?
I don't really. I mean, I use I use Instagram a lot, if that counts. But it's true, like in terms of like apps, it's true that I use Instagram for my personal job, for my personal enjoyment. That's what I wanted to say. But then I also use like collections on Instagram, to kind of like keep up with if I see like cool like influencer profiles that we want to work for. I have like a huge board on that. Then I have a board on photographers that I love, on content that that I love, or on brands. Or I mean, I think it's kind of like the best personal and professional tool that I have.
Hmm. Okay, very cool. And I guess, well, what's your best productivity hack? Is my next question.
Yeah, I mean that's the one. It's just like
Yeah.
it's Instagram collections. I love that. And the thing is that sometimes I have like bad memory, in the sense of like maybe you ask me some like about a reference and I know it's in my head, but I don't remember the name or whatever. And then the good thing about this is that you have it on your phone, so you just have to go and you're like, oh yeah, I saw this reference, and you go and you look for it and it's like right there. So
Yeah, very cool. It's a good tip. Actually, I don't even know about it, so I'm
good
gonna
try.
check it out. So, well, do you have a professional role model or a source of inspiration to share?
I don't really have like a role model in the sense of, one particular person.
Hmm.
I think, as I mentioned earlier, for me, my role model, or what really inspires me, is to work with people that are motivated, that are creative, that really want to take, a brand, a strategy further. I've been lucky enough to like work with super creative people that have actually, I think since I didn't, have I didn't study to do what I'm doing right now. I did communication, but it was like way back. I think I'm learning a lot from the people that I work for. So this is why I'm such a firm believer of like teamwork. So yeah, I think the most enriching experience that you can have is just to work with inspiring people.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I just wanted to ask if you recommend any resources for marketers, like communities, publications, podcasts, things like that.
Yeah. I normally have, I normally have, let's say, a couple of newsletters that I'm subscribed to, which is Business of Fashion. I love Business of Fashion. I think it's great to have like a broad, a broad idea of what's happening, not only in the fashion world, but also in the beauty world. I do use also L2. I use it at work. I have a newsletter and they always have like super interesting cases. But then besides from that, of course, like LinkedIn groups are super interesting, and some of the subjects that come out are very like insightful for whatever you're doing maybe at the time. And then besides from that, and I think this is more kind of like content oriented, I really make sure to keep myself like inspired, because this is the only way you're going to be able to bring something else and something disruptive to the table. And I'm always checking like digital media, like, I don't know, like ID, Vice, Dazed, even I don't know, Vogue or Antidote magazine. I have like many kinds of like media to stay kind of like up to date in terms of trends, but also in terms of content.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. I was curious on LinkedIn groups. Any particular groups that you recommend?
I don't remember. I'm
Not off the top of your head. It's okay.
I'm part of a bunch, but I don't remember one specific one right now.
That's okay. You can tell me later.
Yeah.
I'm always looking for cool LinkedIn groups in marketing. All right. Well, yeah, we're reaching the end of the interview. So I just wanted to ask if you have any parting advice for other marketers in Europe.
I think, and this, yeah, I guess I already also said it, but I think teamwork is kind of like the dream work for me. So this is what I would say.
Okay, absolutely. So to the point, ending comments. I appreciate that. So, well, thanks so much, Laura, for sharing your insights with us today.
No, thank you for having me. It was super, super nice to exchange about this.
Yeah, absolutely. We really enjoyed learning from all your experience. And thanks everybody for listening in. For more perspectives on content marketing in Europe, check out veracontent.com/mix and keep tuning into the podcast for more interviews with content experts. See you next time. Bye-bye.